Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather on the second day of May 2020. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first on the breakup map, you can see starting to see some open areas here, at least some open over or near Fort Yukon there, and also upstream there from the mouth of the Porcupine River. Eagle, still mostly ice, and then of course the Tanana, seeing some open areas there as well, mostly open farther upstream, and the Susitna Valley Susitna River mostly open, and then we've got a flood warning out for the Kuskokwim River from Aniak to Kaltag, and that's out through Sunday until 10 p.m. Sunday for ice jam flooding. Has been some moderate to severe flooding occurring along the warning area there, and that's expected to continue again from Aniak to Kaltag and through tomorrow evening. Otherwise, the flood watch continues as we move on here to the next graphic. Continues along the Kuskokwim River only from Kaltag on out to the Bering Sea coast. Even though the whole zone's illuminated, it's really just for the area along the Kuskokwim River. And from there, that's the only, otherwise, other than the flood watch and warning along the Kuskokwim River, there's no watches, warnings, or advisories out anywhere anywhere else around the state of Alaska. We do have on satellite, we've got kind of a band of high clouds really moving into the eastern Copper River Basin. Could be a few showers over the eastern Alaska Range and possibly the Wrangell Mountains, but nothing too heavy. And then a more organized, stronger band of moisture pushing up, now associated with a front, into the southern southeast coast, spreading gradually northward. Just a few clouds up to the north, but some light rain occurring over the southern panhandle today in Prince of Wales Island. Craig picking up about 1/10 of an inch of precipitation, ending at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Otherwise, mostly sunny over interior Alaska. Some cumulus clouds, it looks like, are forming along the Yukon River there, the lower Yukon Valley area on out into the Delta. And low clouds and areas of fog along the Arctic coast brought some light snow to the central coastal areas today with about 1/4 of an inch falling in some locations, but that being the exception rather than the norm. In the Bering Sea, mostly cloudy, some clearing St. Lawrence Island, as well as the Seward Peninsula, and some pretty good breaks occurring out over the Bering Sea, as you can see. Gulf of Alaska looking good. Kodiak Island, some clouds down towards Sitkinak and Akiak, and some showers around the eastern Aleutians, or about, and also the Pribilofs, where they picked up 0.05 of an inch today at St. George, and on Alaska had about 1/10 of an inch. Otherwise, really no big storms out west there. You can see the cloud shield associated with the advancing system, next frontal system there. That's actually out west of the Komodorskis, but a lot of low clouds up over the northern Bering Sea, especially north and west of St. Matthew Island. And then that low center west of the Queen Charlotte. It's not particularly strong, but bringing a little bit. Mostly the winds are staying to the south of the Panhandle, and even those winds are not strong at all. On the chart, there's the rain ahead of the frontal boundary over the Queen Charlotte, spreading across Dixon Entrance and brought the light rain into the southern southeast coast during the day today. And again, some moisture kicking off a few scattered showers over the Wrangell Mountains, eastern Alaska Range. Otherwise, variable clouds, partly to mostly sunny. Madawaska Susitna Valley into northern Cook Inlet. A few more clouds down the inlet, though, but still sunshine. Temperatures 55 to 60. Over the Kenai Peninsula, and Port Ellsworth pushed up to 63 degrees today, and north winds at about 20 miles an hour at Seward, and into Resurrection Bay, a lot of the temperature pushed up near 60, and along Kenai Lake, temperatures were near or into the lower 60s. Otherwise, mid to upper 50s were the rule across southern Alaska and some areas in the interior, and chillier staying well below freezing along the Arctic coast under that area of high pressure, also resulting in light winds resulting in low clouds over the northern Bering Sea, and a trough brought showers to the western Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, just clipping St. George Island, St. Paul dry. Actually, a few showers around Atka Island today, about 0.04 of an inch, ending at 3 p.m. this afternoon. And the forecast for tonight, excuse me, periods of rain continue as that front looks a little bit more organized, but stays south of the Panhandle. But it will increase the rain over the central Panhandle, spread showers northward to just about all of Lynn Canal and Glacier Bay, possibly reaching Skagway. And that shower threat with the clouds continues over the Wrangell Mountains and upper Tanana, or actually the Nebezna, maybe North Tokeway area, and that's about it. Low clouds and fog will be on the increase again, spreading right up to the crest of the Brooks Range, but south of the mountains, staying clear. And some areas a little breezy, maybe 10 to 15 miles an hour. That'd be mostly higher elevations, and that northeast flow keeps clear skies off the southwest coast with mostly fair conditions, clear conditions, no fog. Nunivak Island, bare chance of fog and clouds of Pribilos, but dry conditions with high pressure over the central Bering Sea areas. Next front, trying to push moisture into Shimei and Attu. See a little bit of an increase in the winds with that. And as that front pushes in, the low pressure area tracks eastward to just off the east coast of Kamchatka Peninsula. That's going to tighten the gradient up enough with that holding area of high pressure over the central Bering Sea to bring 25 to 30 knot winds into the western Aleutians with a band of rain as well, but Adak and Atka under the high, partly to mostly sunny tomorrow with light winds. Just a risk of a shower there on the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, look for some partly sunny skies for the Fox Islands, Pribilofs as well. Could see some afternoon sunshine. And should be mostly clear, sunny along the southwest coast from Bristol Bay right on up to Amonic and into Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island. Could be some patchy areas of low clouds and fog even in the afternoon through the Bering Strait, north coast of St. Lawrence Island, but nothing too significant. More likely though right under that high pressure area along the Arctic coast, but looking really good. Shower chances increase North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula with clouds in the increase, but it'll stay dry for western Turnagain Arm, Madanuska Valley, Cook Inlet, partly sunny skies, but again, increasing clouds in the afternoon. Temperatures still rising into the 50s, and it stays rainy and showery over the southeast coast with coastal winds on the central coast, maybe up to 20-25 miles an hour in gusts. And taking a look ahead to the day on Monday, we've got clearing out over the Panhandle. That system washes out, moisture pulling into Canada and also pulling westward, keeping shower chances in over Prince William Sound and much of the Kenai Peninsula, right up to the Chugach Mountains. Should stay dry over Cook Inlet and the easterly flow in areas from Anchor Point northward. Kenai, Soldotna, just clouds. Anchorage, Palmer, just clouds. Madanuska, sit in the valley, dry. Shower chances increase again over toward the western Alaska Range. Mostly cloudy and showery. Kodiak Island, maybe some fog and low clouds, as well as maybe Bristol Bay and into the southern Kuskokwim Valley and the Aucklands, with risk of a shower up over the central interior, mostly south of the Yukon River. But out of the Tanana Valley, probably see some afternoon sunshine as well. It won't be just solid clouds. There'll be some breaks, and a much weakened front brings a chance of rain eastward there to the central Aleutian areas, and wind's not even a factor with that weak low that's centered over the Adak and Atka area. Otherwise, it stays dry with a fair amount of sunshine again from the northern Bering Sea, St. Lawrence Island, across the Seward Peninsula, Brooks Range, Kobuk, maybe the Koyukuk Valley, and the North Slope. Low clouds, fog tending to persist, but on the decrease through the afternoon for the central coast and the central North Slope areas. And moving on, low temperatures forecast for tonight. Single numbers along the Arctic coast, North Slope as well, to about Arctic Village, near 10 for Anaktuvik. And then we're mid to upper teens there, Kobuk, Koyukuk Valley, Kotzebue, Noatak Valley areas, lower 20s, Seward Peninsula. Teens down into the central interior, and lower 30s, 30 to 35-ish, south central Alaska, Kenai Peninsula, and maybe upper 30s, lower 40s out along the outer coastline. Milder with the clouds in the Panhandle, especially south, lows in the lower 40s. And upper 30s, Kodiak Island, mid 30s, Alaska Peninsula, and the Aleutians, just a shade below freezing for the Pribilofs. And your highs for tomorrow afternoon shaping up like this: 52, 55, 6 or 7 there at Bristol Bay. Some areas might push up towards 60. Same thing for the Susitna Valley. Even with the increase in the clouds, should still see possibly some upper 50s showing up. Definitely in the 50s everywhere else. Lower 50s Copper River Basin. Mid to upper 50s southeast coast. And North Slope 20s to lower 30s in the Arctic coast. Coldest on the east side there with mid to upper teens. And then from the central coast westward, it warms from 20 near Barrow to 31 at Cape Lisburne and Point Hope. Back down to 27 at Chishmareth, but Nome 40 degrees. And then the lows back into the single numbers, staying above zero though, or close to it for areas of the Arctic coast North Slope. And we've got 20s in the central interior, mid to upper 30s for the southern coast, low 40s Panhandle, followed by highs again, 50s over much of the interior to near 50 central interior to near 20 up there.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic Sunday morning IFR North Slope on out to the Arctic coast and Brooks Range southward, Gulf of Alaska, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, all VFR. We've got some marginal VFR showing up over the Wrangell Mountains, far eastern Alaska range. Marginal VFR, southern 2/3 of the southeast coast, central areas on down into Dixon Entrance. IFR, northern Seward Peninsula, through the Bering Strait. IFR to start the day, St. Lawrence Island, part of the Yukon Delta coast to Nunivak Island, and some IFR sitting out in the central Bering Sea. Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, mostly marginal, some IFR pushing up to Shimia and Attu. And looking at the afternoon, we've just got a little area of marginal VFR over the central North Slope and Arctic coast area. Otherwise VFR, all of the interior and off the coast, VFR with just some lingering marginal conditions for Gamble. Pribilof's IFR, and we got IFR increasing, spreading eastward from Attu Island to Amchitka, marginal VFR for the central eastern Aleutians and the north side of the Alaska Peninsula. Kodiak Island, Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, good VFR tomorrow. Marginal VFR still plaguing the eastern Copper River Basin and now the eastern North Gulf Coast, almost to near Cordova, eastward on down the entire Panhandle and eastern Gulf of Alaska. Monday morning, that persists and expands over all of the Gulf of Alaska, increasing marginal VFR deteriorating conditions over all of the southeast interior up to and actually north of the Alaska Range into the 40-mile country upper Tanana Valley. Much of the interior, though, remains VFR. Nunivak Island seeing some low stuff, resulting IFR there, mostly west of Macoriac and St. Lawrence Island IFR through the Bering Strait again. And low clouds, fog make for IFR conditions for the North Slope Arctic coast, as well as the central Bering and frontal boundary pushing IFR eastward to Adak and eventually Atka Islands. Fognak Island, marginal. Kodiak Island, including Chiniak, Marmot Bay areas, Kodiak State Airport, all marginal, or all VFR, IFR northern Panhandle along the eastern border, otherwise marginal. And in the afternoon, that burns off to VFR and sunshine for the southeast coast. Marginal VFR with some scattered areas of VFR for the areas south and east of the Alaska Range, otherwise north and west of the mountains, looking good until you get north of the Brooks Range. Marginal VFR for the North Slope Central Arctic coast. And the Bering Sea, St. Matthew Island, St. Paul, St. George, all IFR, Atka IFR, otherwise marginal for the remainder of the Aleutians, and the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, marginal. Kodiak Island becoming a little more marginal, widespread marginal VFR pushing in from the east. Passes Anatuvik and Adigan, both good VFR tomorrow. Western Central Alaska Range, all VFR, rainy, windy. Isabel, VFR, but Mentasta, chance of marginal VFR the entire day tomorrow. Either approach. Tanita, though, good VFR once again. Portage, ceilings visibility is unlimited there. Chilkoot and White, VFR, but look for the ceilings to come down throughout the afternoon. And for the freezing levels, 4,000 feet southeast coast up into the southeast interior and south central Alaska, 2,000 feet up to the Brooks Range, and then at the surface, St. Lawrence Island, western Seward Peninsula, along the crest of the Brooks Range. Icing. We've got areas of isolated moderate pushing into the Panhandle, increasing along the North Gulf Coast, Wrangell Mountains, and more icing with that next frontal system pushing into the western Aleutians. Jet stream, 60-knot jet pushing that front eastward into the Aleutian southwest bearing tomorrow, and that east-southeast flow pushing the moisture into the eastern Copper River Basin and the areas around Nebezna, Northway, and Tok. Northeast flow farther to the north into the northern Bering Sea, and at 9,000 feet, high pressure over the Bering Sea with northeast flow over the interior, dry and mostly clear, except down over the Copper River Basin. Some moisture slipping up from Canada and the eastern Gulf there. 35 to 40 knot winds over the Panhandle. And we've got 20 to 40 knot winds out of the northeast at 3,000 feet here, and 45 knot winds over the Panhandle, resulting.
Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service with another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining me today are not just one, but two people, both with the last name Stevens, which is even more fun, but no relation. We have Eric Stevens from Dehne and George Stevens, who is a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Awesome. And today you guys brought a really cool toy, or I should say tool, with you. It's a sandbox, but why are you guys working on a sandbox?
Well, it's part of our senior design project, and we were approached by AKwx to build this for them. They had a proof of concept that they developed about a year ago, I think, and they wanted a more robust version that they could pack onto a plane and take places, and it's a handy learning tool for kids and adults.
So you're a mechanical engineering student. You've built a traveling sandbox for the experimental program to stimulate competitive research, EPSCoR, and Dehne's facilitated this. But why do we need a traveling sandbox?
Well, the prototype was such a big hit that they decided they wanted another one, actually two, that that would be easier to travel with, possibly marketable even.
Okay, so this is a traveling sandbox that's got a lot of bits and pieces and a computer hooked up to it. What is the computer doing with the sand?
The computer actually uses a Kinect sensor to read the topography of the sand or the shape of the sand, and then the computer translates that into information which it projects using a projector onto the sand, showing topographical lines and which is representative of the shape of the sand.
Okay, so this is a live mapping tool?
Yeah. It's interactive. As you're moving your hands through it, it is actively following and changing the lines to fit what you're doing.
That sounds like something I could have in my backyard.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot of fun. So you guys had to change the design a little bit to make this more Alaska-fied, right?
Yeah.
Okay, how'd you do that?
Well, the original was made out of basically lumber and Simpson strong tie type stuff, and we rebuilt it to make it lighter and basically more transportable. We can pack it down to a fairly small size, and it can be loaded onto a plane and flown anywhere in the state. Which
you guys did today. And you have plans to take this in other places of Alaska, right?
Yep, we're actually going to be headed down to Homer with it later today.
Okay, very good. Eric, how does this fit into science learning around Alaska?
Well, you know what? I think it is a tool and it is a toy, and it brings out a smile from an 8-year-old and the smile from a 48-year-old with that inner 8-year-old wanting to get out. The sandbox, it's an interactive learning tool that teaches us how topography in the 3 dimensions is related to, say, a 2-dimensional map. More about that later. Just like George was saying, it's got a Kinect sensor, not just for video games anymore. It can sense out the lay of the land there, feeds that information in the computer. Computer identifies that, sends a signal to a projector to send topographic lines to map over that lumpy ground. So you get a 3-dimensional topo map out of it. And my favorite thing about it, this is the thing that stops people at the trade show, they stop at your booth and don't leave, is that you run your hand through that sandbox and it responds in real time. It remaps the topography as you get to be Mr. Tectonic Plate Drifter there. You can make things how you want. Well, what if we made a really high mountain here and a low valley there, and the lines adjust to what you did? It's a learning tool because it shows you that connection between these two-dimensional topo lines and what's really out in Alaska. And Alaska's a place with all kinds of topography. You know, we're from the Great Plains, where topo maps tend to be just like blank pieces of paper, but Alaska is particularly gifted in this regard, and this tool helps us, I think, learn more about our state, really.
Absolutely. And so this is going to enhance STEM learning, the science, technology, engineering, and math, in many different locations around Alaska. Then this would be something that kids and teachers can get their hands on.
It sure is. And I mentioned the it's like flypaper at a booth that, or at the Science Potpourri when we had Greg's original version of this sandbox, and that one was made out of scraps of wood, and it was a prototype. But even that one, before it had some of the refinements that George and crew have made for this newer, upscaled, maybe a 2.0 version of the sandbox, even that one was so attractive to people. It just demonstrated that this has potential to be a learning tool, an outreach tool, an education tool that now is portable and can go places in Alaska. Of course, there's only one sandbox, can't be everywhere at once, but hopefully it gets out there, gets the word out about EPSCoR and what science is being done here for Alaskans.
All right, that sounds really interesting, and I can't wait to get my hands in the sand and try this out for myself. We're going to demonstrate this here in our next segment of Alaska Weather Facts, but before we go, we want to remind you that EPSCoR, which is a new acronym for me now, but I'm going to remember this because you can follow them on Facebook and Twitter, and I invite you to do that. Alaska EPSCoR is also something that facilitates science learning at the University of Alaska around the state, and that stands for Experimental Program to Stimulate Competitive Research. So check that out, and make sure you tune in tomorrow because we're going to have the next version where we actually get our hands in the sand and check out how this works and demonstrates that topography. So for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you again next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Okay, welcome back. Looking at marine forecasts for the Panhandle. Increase in the winds tomorrow. Kind of breezy, south to southeast, 30 knots on the south coast. Easterlies at 30 knots on the north coast, with seas running near 10 feet. For Clarence Strait, small craft advisories there as well, with southeast winds at 25 knots and 15-knot winds out of the southeast for Stevens Passage. Southerlies at 15 for Lynn Canal. And moving on to the following day, we've got for Monday, variable winds at 10 knots over all of the central and southern inside waters, seas running 2 to maybe 3 feet, highest there in Clarence Strait. Lighter winds on the outer coastline, all from the southeast at 20 to 25 knots, central coast running 20 knots with the north and south coast at 25, again from the southeast, seas 8 to 9 feet. And for south central Alaska, starting out Prince William Sound, northwest winds on the light side right into the North Gulf Coast, all at 10 knots out of the northwest, 2-foot seas in the Sound, 5 to 6 feet on the ocean. North 15 for the Barren Islands, northwest at 15 for the Kamishak Bay area. Cook Inlet, north to northwest, 10 to 15 knots with 2 to 3 foot seas. And from there, we'll move to Monday's outlook. Look for an increase in the winds. Cook Inlet, northeast 20 knots north of the Forelands, and southern Cook Inlet, small craft advisories right into Kamishak Bay, northeast of 25. East winds 25 knots, Barren Islands, western North Gulf Coast over toward Middleton Island, a little brisker at 30 knots sustained with 12-foot seas, and Prince William Sound, east 25 knots, seas 6 feet. Alaska Peninsula, northwest at 15 tomorrow, seas not too bad, 4 to 5 feet, west 15 Bristol Bay with 3-foot seas, and Shelikof Strait, northwest 15, east side of Kodiak Island, northwest at 20 with seas running at 6 feet. Outlook for Monday, northeast 15 to 20 knots for Kodiak Island and Shelikof Strait, Bristol Bay north 15, northwest 15, 4 to 5 foot seas continues for the Alaska Peninsula. Sitkinak to Castle Cape, northwesterlies at 20 with 6-foot seas. Fox Islands, Unalaska Island, north to northwest 15 to 20 knots, 4 to 5 foot seas. Unmak Island, north at 15 with 4 to 5 foot seas. Pretty light winds again under high pressure, partly to mostly sunny skies, 8 Akanatka, optimistically. Seas 4 feet with 10 knot winds, and then picking up to small craft advisories ahead of that incoming front, 25 to 30 knots. And then for Monday, those will swing around to the west behind the front at 25 to 30 knots or less, 9 to 11 foot seas. Adak and Atka, possibly as high as 25 knots on those southeast winds, probably less, because that front really weakens when it hits the central Aleutians, and variable winds 10 to 15 knots for the Fox Islands. And moving on to the Bering Sea or along the southwest coast, for the Kuskokwim Delta coastline, north winds at 20 knots, 4 foot seas. Yukon Delta coast, north at 20 with 3 foot seas, about the same there. Norton Sound, north at 20 with 4 foot seas, a little lighter for St. Lawrence Island. 15 or less, 3 foot seas from the north. St. Matthew Island and the Pribilofs, north at 15. And up north, or no, Monday, St. Lawrence Island and the Yukon Delta coast, both north 15, seas 1 to 3 feet. Northeast at 20 for Norton Sound with 3 foot seas. And the Kuskokwim Delta coast, northwest 15. Pribilofs, southeast at 10. And St. Matthew Island, north at 15. Now for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, light winds, variable at 5, with light southerlies along the central coast, turning east at 10 knots on the west side, northeast from Cape Lisburne to Point Hope, but only 10 knots, and also 10 knots from Wales to Point Hope. And then for Monday, central coast, east at 10, a little brisker now, only 15 knots, but pick up from what you'll see on Sunday there for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. East 15 also on the west side, and northeast 15 from Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, and from Cape Thompson to Wales, north at 10. For tonight again, periods of rain over the southern panhandle. Showers increase along with the clouds over the northern panhandle. Clouds and showers start to increase mostly tomorrow along the North Gulf Coast, spreading into Prince William Sound. The chance of showers spreads into the western Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula during the afternoon hours. Otherwise sunny and warm again. Temperatures in the 40s and 50s, staying below freezing for the North Slope and Arctic coast. Front pushes in with the 25 to 30 knot winds, and that really weakens as it hits central Aleutians on Monday and Tuesday. We're looking pretty good.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.